situated in Kutanad, Kerala, in association with Private Ayurveda College Teachers Organization of Kerala. We started a series of teachers continuous learning and promotive program 2 weeks before. The first Gurumukham has been inaugurated by Padma Shri Krishna Kumarji, the founder and director of AVP Ayurveda Pharmacy, Coimbatore. We had a great initiative lesson by him on 11th of June. And we had a second lesson by Dr. Antonio Morandi, the founder director of Ayurvedic Point, Italy. He's spoken about timeless medicine in Ayurveda. And in this series today, we are going to have our third Gurumukham with another most important eminent speaker, Dr. Srinivas Acharya, principal of SDM Ayurveda College, Udupi. It's a great privilege and pride for me to introduce my mentor, my guide, and my teacher, who was great instrumental to grooming a large number of students from all over India. Dr. Srinivas Acharya sir was instrumental in teaching and learning of graduates and postgraduates in SDM Ayurveda College, Udupi, and also guided a large number of PhDs and PGs.
Thank you. New join best speaker. Link.
Madam, can you please mute your audio, please? Dr. Srinivas Acharya sir has done post-graduation from IPGTA RA Jamnagar with a gold medal and joined in SDM Udupi in 1988. And he has a long career as a clinician, academician, and more than a great inspirative teacher for all of us from last 3 decades. He has published a wonderful book on Panchakarma Illustrated. He has contributed chapters in, also become a co-author for a book called Integrative Medicine published by McGraw-Hills, which is the same publisher who published the great book of Harrison's. So today's speaker is none other than our beloved teacher, none other than our most beloved academician, Dr. Srinivas Acharya sir. And I welcome on behalf of Ashtangam Ayurveda College teachers and welcome on behalf of PACTO to this August function. Before we begin our session, I just request Dr. Shibu Varghese, the professor and head of department of Panchakarma, Nangelil Ayurveda College, Kodamangalam, also a student of Srinivas Acharya sir, to say a felicitation. Dr. Shibu, you may.
Good afternoon, Acharya sir. Is gathering for academic activity. So when PACTO has been formed, our main aim was to support the private Ayurveda colleges, at the same time to provide reoriented programs and to conduct research. So the first thing is already been done perfectly by the present day organizers, and now we are stepping into a new step, that is the reorientation program. And for the reorientation program, it's a great proud and privilege that my own teacher of KIL sir, Dr. Srinivas Acharya sir, has come and is going to present this topic, and it gives me a great pleasure at this time. Also, PACTO is an organization set up for the welfare of private Ayurveda college teachers to impart the skills or to improve the skills of the doctors. I am very much pleased to be aware that PACTO is ensuring this all by means. And Acharya sir is an authority in established Ayurveda, is the principal of SDM Ayurveda College, the most prestigious and pioneer institute in the field. And he has set his foot in the entire diversity of Ayurveda and made his mark. his efforts in the healthy blend of modern medicine with the Ayurveda is not only given including, sorry, the connection got in, including me, especially in the terms of this biochemical investigations and radiological investigations. I started learning the investigation. I'm taking on investigations and X-rays and ECG. Literally narrate one thing. In the hospital for some other work, and my physiotherapist and her father came saying that he got some chest discomfort. So I immediately took an ECG and found that he's having an acute myocardial infection, and immediately sent him for the hospital. So to save the life of the patient, it is only because of Acharya sir was taught the basics of ECG. And he is the one who inspired me to learn the radiological inspection and the scope of investigations in Ayurveda. So it's a great privilege that Acharya sir has come to for giving me an opportunity to felicitate my guru and wish you all the success for this venture. Thank you.
Thank you, Shibu. Now I request our beloved teacher, Srinivasa Acharya sir, to begin his lecture. Sir, I have already made you host. We have already made you host, so you can share your screen.
Okay. I hope now my screen is also seen everywhere, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
good
sir.
evening, everybody. Thanks to Dr. Narayan Nambi and also Shibu Varghese for all the compliments from your side. And today I may be speaking very basic issue that everybody may be quite aware of, but still I consider that recalling the methodology may be very helpful in future, just to recall or to brush up your memory about the diagnostic approach. I may be speaking few words about that. And you see the walking cat, and just reminds about how the cat brings up its kitten. The monkey, it also brings up its offspring. The cat also brings or builds up its kitten, and there's a basic difference in these two. If you have seen the monkey, the baby monkey will be holding the abdomen of the mother, and the mother monkey will be jumping from one tree to the other tree, and the baby monkey should strongly cling on to its mother's tummy, and the mother monkey does not have any responsibility of the safety of its child. It is the child has or the baby monkey has got all the responsibility of holding firmly himself into his abdomen's mother. That's how a monkey carries its kitten or the baby. But so far as the cat is concerned, it is totally different. If it is carrying its kitten from one place to the other place, it will firmly catch its kitten at its neck with her sharp canine teeth. And the grip is very strong. At the same time, the grip is very smooth, because the strong grip, if it is strong, it is likely to kill the kitten itself. And therefore, though it is strong, it is also equally smooth. And what the kitten will be doing? Kitten will be folding its legs, and its tail is also coiled, and it closes its eyes, and it holds no responsibility of its safety. And it is the sole responsibility of the mother about the safety of that particular kitten, when she is carrying the kitten from one place to the other place, jumping the compound wall from one place to the other place, and the kitten doesn't have any responsibility at all. This how there is a major this is the major difference between how the cat brings out builds up its kitten, and also the monkey brings out its offspring. And so far as treatment is concerned, it is just like the cat carrying its kitten. Once the patient comes to the physician, patient himself does not show any responsibility of his health. He will be shouldering the all responsibility of his health to the physician, and the physician has look into diagnosis, look into prescription, look into dietetics, look into other regimens, so that the disease is cured. Sole responsibility is the physician's. Anyway, in this particular regard, this is how a clinical practice is about. And in that particular clinical practice, diagnosis is the first step. That is followed by the treatment. Diagnosis is the first step, treatment is the second step, follow-up is the third step, and I shall be restricting myself to the diagnostic aspect. And this will be very easy because all you people are doing the same thing. I shall repeat the same. And it is being said in the literature that tatra idam upadishanti buddhimantaha rogam ekaikam evam prakopanam. In what way it has caused yoni, evam yonim, which particular dosha is involved, and in what way it is manifesting. Is it the severe form? Is it the milder form? Or is it the body which is involved? Or is it the mind which is involved? And what is the symptomatology of that? And what about it? Does it cause any complications or not? All these informations are included in the diagnosis. All these informations are included in the diagnosis. That itself is the purpose of the planning of the diagnosis. And how you actually begin your diagnosis? You do the physical examination, you inquire about the patient, or you unravel the whole story of the illness. Once the whole story of the illness is unraveled, all the symptoms that are present, all the signs that are present, then you will make a diagnosis. And usually this is achieved in 5 steps. That is a designation of the disease. First, what you do is you will just name a particular illness in that particular, then differential diagnosis. Make it sure that there may be similar other diseases that need to be differentiated. And once the disease name is specified, that's not enough. Then you have to tell about what is the type of the disease. Then you have to assess the stage. That's also equally important for planning the treatment. And then exploring the etiology. And exploring the etiology may be equally important. And that's how the different steps that you adopt. And in that also, the first step, what you do is you just assess the Samprapti Ghataka. What is the dosha, what is the dusha, what is the srotas, and what is the dosha sanchara sthana, what is the pratyatma linga, vyakti sthana. That's about yatha dushtena doshena, yatha chana visarpata. Once that is known, probably the disease name is also known. And first step is the understanding the dosha, which particular dosha is involved. And for descriptive purposes, we call it as dosha are the primary factor. They are the first factors that are involved in the disease process. And they tend to incriminate the secondary factors. They are also called as dusha. The secondary factors are, primary factors are involved affecting the secondary factors. One presumption one should make that every symptom has a definite relation. If the patient has 10 symptoms, all the 10 symptoms have got the relation with the dosha. And if the patient has 20 symptoms, then 20 symptoms have got this relation with the dosha. That means if any symptom is there, that's caused by the dosha, that is the presumption. And it may be physical or mental. Both need to be considered. And so far as the causation and modification are the two relations between the symptom and the dosha, and that need to be differentiated. And also, depleted dosha does not cause the disease, that's the rule. And by this particular presumption, then you will decide what is the dosha which is involved in the case. I shall make more matter. I shall make. If the patient has 10 symptoms or if the patient has 20 symptoms, all the symptoms need to be analyzed. That should not be in a room for all symptoms need to be analyzed, both physical and mental. Mental symptoms, if it is that should be analyzed. And why all symptoms should be determined, analyzed, that's a rule for that's important for that. In the later phase of the diagnosis, you will be determining the predominance. There are different methods for analyzing the dominance of the dosha in a given disease, but one of the criteria is the number of symptoms that are representing a particular dosha. And if 10 symptoms are there, if all the 10 symptoms are analyzed, and if 8 symptoms are suggestive of one dosha and another 2 symptoms are suggestive of other 2 dosha, then the symptoms representing 8 dosha is considered predominant dosha. That means doshic predominance is being determined by the dominance of or the predominance of the number of symptoms itself. And therefore, there is no question of leaving any one symptom unanalyzed in the case. And secondly, the virulence of the dosha. More the number of symptoms, that means the dosha is said to be more severe. And for that particular you have to consider all the symptoms present in the case. And all the symptoms, and they also tell about the prognosis. And if the 10 possible symptoms are present, or 10 possible symptoms, and all the 10 are present in the patient, means that is a poor prognosis. And out of the 10 possible symptoms, if only 2 are present in a particular individual, that indicates that's a comparatively has got a better prognosis. And therefore, you are supposed to consider the doshic symptom, you are supposed to consider the symptom and relate those symptoms to a particular dosha, assuming that every symptom has got a relation with the dosha. That's the rule. And therefore, all symptoms need to be analyzed. And when we say that if a patient has any particular symptom and that must have a relation with the dosha, there may be an exception. Exception is only the Raja Yakshma, where it is being said that Makshika Gunakeshanam Trinanam Padananicha Prayo Annapane Keshanam Nakanam Vardhanam. When a person is taking the food, and if the Trina or the Kesha, if it is falling on the food, that is considered to be the premonitory symptom of Raja Yakshma, and that is unrelated to the dosha. But in all the other occasions, if any symptom is there, definitely it has got a relation. Either it is a Karshya, Karshnya, Ushna Kamitva, or it is a Raga, Daha, Paka, Toda, or it is a Shota, Gaurava, Alasya, Staimitya. Whatever it may be, whatever the symptom the patient has, it must have a relation to dosha, and accordingly you have to determine the doshic involvement. And further about the doshic involvement, dosha is said to have, or the symptom is said to have two distinct relations with that of the dosha. We call it as a causation and modification. And causation means this dosha that causes the symptom. Modification in the sense the dosha that modifies the symptom. I shall give you a simple example. Say for example, Shota. Shota, I shall say Divabali Shota. If I am saying that Divabali Shota is present, where Divabali Shota is said to be dominance of the Kapha dosha. That Divabali in the sense it is dominance of the Vata dosha. And accordingly, if you say that the Divabali Shota is suggestive of Vata dosha, and if you try to make a diagnosis of Shota, that is never possible, because for the diagnosis of Shota, you require the Kapha. And therefore, instead of considering it as Divabali Shota, then you consider that it is Shota. That is the causative dosha. For the Shota is the Kapha dosha. And so far as the modifying dosha is concerned, that's actually the Vata. Vata has modified that particular kapha Shodha, and that is a modifying factor, that is the modification relation. Say for example, the sputum, the causative dosha is the kapha dosha. And if it is yellowish in color, then it is modified by the pitta dosha. That is a pitta dosha modification. And in that particular way, a symptom, if it is present, it may have the relation with the dosha as a causative symptom or the modification. And you will be considering only the causative relation for the diagnostic purposes. Because if you consider the modifying symptoms also, modifying symptom is required in the second phase to assess the type of the disease. If you want to say that the patient is suffering from the Kasa Roga, then the kapha should be there. And if you want to say that it is a pitta dosha, then pitta jakasa, then modification by the pitta dosha, that need to be understood in the second phase. So in the first phase, you will be knowing about the determining, or you will be determining the dosha. For that purpose, you will be assessing the relation, the causative relation rather than the modification. Jwara is caused by the pitta dosha. Shota is caused by the kapha dosha. Intermittent nature of the jwara is by vata. Predominant shota during the day is by vata. So this is modification and the causation. And we will be considering only the causative dosha in the first phase, because we want to know something about the name of the disease, and for the type of the disease, then we will be knowing about the modifying dosha. And to determine the dosha, what you have to consider? You have to consider dosha vriddhi lakshana, dosha prakopa lakshana, and dosha dushti lakshana that are mentioned in the literature that need to be considered. And what you have to ignore, if there is any symptom that is suggestive of dosha, that is because of dosha kriya, that need to be ignored. If there is any symptom that is related to that of the prakriti, that need to be ignored. And this particular, if you ignore and if you consider only vriddhi, prakopa and dushti lakshana, then your diagnosis will be right. The reason is,
Sir, can you make me the host in between so that I can just change something? Sir, Raja sir, are you able to hear me?
yes, I am able to hear me.
Yeah.
Because people are joining, I have to.
Yeah, yes, that's all. I will make it my host, because just change me in your click. You just click on my name or Ashtangam name, so we can be host, so that it will not disturb you. They will join it.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, it's okay. And dosha kshaya lakshana and the dosha prakriti lakshana, that need to be ignored. And it is required to ignore because, say for example, the person has got the karshya, then immediately you say that it is a vata prakopa lakshana and the prakopita vata lakshana. And it is also suggestive of kapha kshaya lakshana. That means for every symptom, it has got a dosha vriddhi dushti relation, and it may also have a dosha kshaya relation. And if you analyze every symptom with this dosha vriddhi and dosha kshaya, probably in every disease you will end up with this doshic manifestation that does not serve the purpose. And therefore, literature has specified that China hi dosha svalingani matra vikara nadikam juradim kartam samartha. Since its relation in the causation of the disease is minimum, it is best ignored for the diagnostic purposes. That doesn't mean that the dosha kshaya does not produce a symptom. Definitely that will produce a symptom. You will get enough references in the literature. But at the same time, it is said that you need to ignore it, because when the analysis, if you do not ignore, then in every case you will end up with doshic manifestation that does not serve the purpose of diagnosis at all. And therefore, it's better you think about the dosha vriddhi lakshana, dosha prakopa lakshana, dosha dushti lakshana, ignoring the symptoms that is because of the dosha kshaya, and also that is because of the prakriti. Prakriti, of course, it itself is the prakriti, and that need to be ignored. And then deduce the doshic involvement. Consider all symptoms present, because you also have to determine the dominance of the dosha. Consider vriddhi, prakopa and dushti lakshana, and avoid dosha kshaya lakshana and dosha prakriti lakshana. That's help in identifying the exact pathology and arriving at a concrete diagnosis. That's about you determine the dosha. Once the dosha is determined, then the secondary factors need to be determined. Dosha will affect the dusya. And I would have just said that it is dusya only. But I have used the word secondary factors. The reason is dosha can affect dhatu, it can affect mala, it can affect dhatu in dusya, it can affect mala, it can also affect indriya, and it can affect the manas. That means in a given patient, if a symptom is present, it must have a relation with any one of the dosha. And secondly, all these symptoms are analyzed for the second time, and every symptom or any symptom that is present must have a relation with any one of dhatu, mala, indriya or manas. And therefore, you have to assess, we consider this as secondary factors, the second factors. Symptoms is related to any one. Same symptom point dusya involvement. That means if the first 10 symptoms are analyzed, the same 10 symptoms will also say about the dusya involved. There is no any category of two category of the symptoms as one representing the dosha and another representing the dusya. No. It is the same set of symptoms that represent both dosha and also the dusya. And vriddhi, kshaya, dushti, lakshana to be considered. And when we are analyzing the dosha, we have ignored the kshaya symptoms. But so far as analysis of the dusha is concerned, there is no question of ignoring kshaya symptoms, because there are some of the diseases that are mainly because of the kshaya itself, like that of the pandu. Therefore, there is no question of ignoring the kshaya. And indriyani samashita prakupyanti yadamala upagata upatapa bhyam yojayanti indriyani te. So, indriya involvement, dusya involvement, mala involvement, manas involvement may be likely, and accordingly, you have to analyze the dusya which is involved or the secondary factors of involvement. And how will you determine the secondary factor? Dhatu vriddhi, dushti, dosha, dhatu vriddhi, dhatu dushti, dhatu kshaya, dhatu pradolaksha lakshana. These are the different categories of the symptoms that are available in the literature, and all have to be considered for the analysis. And again, dhatu mala vriddhi kshaya lakshana, it's also mentioned that should be considered. And then indriya pradosha lakshana and manas dushti lakshana, these are being mentioned in the literature, and that should be considered. That's how you assess it. Tatra sadhisthane prakritam doshanam yasmin sthane ye vyadaya samtastan yatavad anumayityasma, where it is said that it is a dosha that produces the symptoms in a particular dhatu. Then about the srotas in the third phase. Dosha is involved, it is analyzed. Dusha is involved, that is interpreted. Now how about the srotas involvement is interpreted? Every symptom has a relation with the srotas now. That's another concept. Every symptom has got a relation with dosha. Every symptom has got a relation with secondary factors. Every symptom has got a relation with the srotas also. And when we speak about the srotas, you have the drishya srotas and adrishya srotas, or it is also referred as bhagya srotas and abhyantara srotas. And for the diagnostic purposes, when we speak about the srotas, the adrishya srotas or it is the abhyantara srotas. We are not considering the bhagya srotas in that particular occasion. And again, all symptoms need to be analyzed. If 10 symptoms are present, all 10 should be again analyzed for the srotas involvement. And you can have a simplification of the understanding of the srotas or involvement of the srotas. And for that purpose, just understand that there are two categories of the symptoms based on their distribution. That is one, the symptoms that are spread on the extremities, that are shakashita symptoms. The second, or sometimes peripheral symptoms like that of the shota, or the symptoms that are related to the trunk, skandashita. This is the second category of the symptoms. Second category of the symptoms, like that of the shwasa. That means it is related to the trunk or skandashita. Categorize the symptom into central and peripheral. That is shakashita and skandashita. And for the shakashita symptoms that are present in the periphery of the body, name the relevant srotas of the dhatu, mala, indriya, manas affected. And if you say that the patient has the rasadhatu lakshana, and you have to say that rasava srotas is affected. Raktava srotas is affected, then raktava dhatu is not, raktava srotas is affected. That is invariable, that you need not find for the symptoms. If you have determined that Raktadhatu is involved, invariably it says that Raktavah Srotas is also affected. That is, peripheral symptoms consider level Srotas of the Dhatu. And if any symptom, if it is central, that is from the core of the body, from the skandha, then for every symptom you have to mention 2 Srotas. I shall give you an example. Shota is Rasavaha and definitely related to the periphery. But Swasa is concerned, that is Skandashita, where you have to mention 2 Srotas, that is Rasavaha and Pranamaha. And similarly, Pralapa, you have the 2, Raktavaha and Manovaha. In other words, to say, if any particular symptom is residing in the periphery, then you have to mention only one, you are supposed to mention 1 Srotas that is relevant to the Dhatu affected. And the second is the trunk. And if the trunk is involved, then you, for every symptom, where you have to mention about 2 Srotas. One, the Dhatavaha Srotas, the second one is the Srotas that is very typical, very particular to that of the Skandha. And if I have any exception to say, then it is actually the Sveda, Sveda Srotas. When the sweating is involved, then you may have to mention about the 2 Srotas. You have to mention about the Sveda Srotas, and you may also mention about the Medo Srotas. Anyway, deciding the Srotas is very simple. If the symptoms are only located in the periphery, then the determination of the Dhatu itself is the Srotas involved. And if the truncal symptoms are present, then for every symptom that is present, that you have to mention 2 Srotas, and that has to be added. And based on that, you will be deciding the Srotas. Then about the Sancharasthana. So determination of the Sancharasthana of the dosha is very simple. It is on the basis of the distribution of the symptoms. Symptoms are categorized into 2. One is a constitutional symptom. The second one is a localized symptom or local symptom. Constitutional symptom in the sense there are some symptoms that involve the whole body. Say for example, Jwara. Jwara means there is warmth in the whole body, that is Jwara. And the second possibility is the finger pain. The finger is only the finger is affected when the finger pain is there. That's a localized one. And therefore, in a given or in a list of symptoms that the patient has, you have to decide that how many constitutional symptoms are present, how many localized symptoms are there. If any constitutional symptoms are there, then straight away you say that the Sancharasthana of the dosha is Sarva Sharira. And if these no constitutional symptoms are present in the list that you have identified, then consider that distribution of the symptoms itself is the Sancharasthana of the dosha. Say for example, when it is affecting part of the body, like Gulma and Mandala, where the symptom distribution is present, there you say that it is the dosha Sancharasthana. So that's how we decide the dosha Sancharasthana. Then something about the ascertain the Sanchar. Distribution of the symptom determines Sancharasthana. Constitutional symptoms, if present, it is Sarva Sharira. And if it is the constitutional symptoms are absent, then Shariranga Sancharasthana or Avabhavaka Samsa. That is the example where the distribution of the symptoms itself is the Sancharasthana in that particular occasion. Identification of the Pratyatmalinga is most important in the final diagnosis. And Pratyatmalinga in the sense it is the symptom that is inevitable for the diagnosis. Without that, you cannot make a diagnosis. And identification of Pratyatmalinga is most important. The reason is you have the Udara Shula and Udara Roga. Most persistent. In the sense, a patient who is suffering from the abdominal pain, a patient is suffering from the diarrhea, and the patient who is suffering from the abdominal distension. When these 3 symptoms are present, one physician may diagnose as Atisara, another patient may diagnose as Udara Shula, and third patient may diagnose it as Ana. So, Admana. These are the 3 possibilities. And how about finaling the disease? Then, in such situations, 3 symptoms present in 3 patients, diagnosis is different, where determination of the diagnosis is based on the Pratyatmalinga. Out of the symptoms, how to decide that the particular symptom is Pratyatmalinga? Then, that is considered on the basis of most severe symptom. Say, for example, the person is suffering from these 3 symptoms, and he has visited the toilet 20 times, and he has also the abdominal pain and some amount of distension. Then definitely you say that it is Atisara. And the patient is shouting with abdominal pain from morning to evening, has passed 2 loose stools, then probably your diagnosis is Chula rather than the Atisara. So in one patient, both the symptoms are present, but severity of Atisara is more in the first patient and abdominal pain is severe more in the second patient. The diagnosis differs in that particular way, where the predominant symptom that you have identified is totally different. Accordingly, you have made a difference. The second is most persistent. One is most persistent, or severe is the criteria. The second is most persistent. The person has a patch, the person has a itching, and the person has an eruption. And you are supposed to make a diagnosis of the Vichachika. And it is dependent upon the secretion. And you see that the itching is present and the discoloration is present and the discharge is also present. And among these, the itching and discharge is most persistent, but eruption sometimes present, sometimes not present. But you consider that most persistent symptom is the one, and that will help you to decide the Pratyatmalinga. And Pratyatmalinga is helping for the diagnosis. Most chronic symptom. That means if the patient has a leg pain, if the patient has a shoulder pain, and at the same time patient has weakness in the half of the body, then persistent is shoulder pain is not present all the days. Sometimes it is present, sometimes it is not present. And but so far as weakness in the half of the body is present always, and therefore instead of making the diagnosis of Apabhavaka, you will be making a diagnosis of Pakshagata because it is most persistent, most chronic. And about widely distributed. So if the patient has multiple lesions, where in the multiple areas, which one is involved? And scaling, if it is present in all the areas, then you consider it's a widely distributed symptom that has to be considered. So in one area it is red, in another area it is just itching, and the scaling is present throughout the body. And scaling is a diagnostic feature rather than the other features in that particular skin. Therefore, widely distributed symptom has to be taken. And of diagnostic significance. If I say that most severe, if I say that most persistent, if I say that most chronic, if I say that widely distributed, and the diagnosis of Pandu is not possible by considering any of these, because the Pandu symptom is neither severe, nor persistent, nor chronic, not even widely distributed so far as the patient is concerned. Because the physician will be assessing on the day of the patient's visit. But what has happened earlier, Pandu the patient may not consider at all. You will have the exultant dyspnea as a leading symptom. And therefore, you are supposed to identify such a symptom that has got a diagnostic significance, not any symptom as a leading symptom. That's also another criteria. Vyaktisthana, where the Pratyatmalinga is present, that itself is the Vyaktisthana, and the identification of the Vyaktisthana is very simple. And so, among these elaborations, the exploring of the Nidana is considered to be most difficult. The reason is, establish the causal relation with the suspected factor. That is only possible if person has got a trauma history. Immediately the patient has developed the symptom, then diagnosis is very easy. Etiological diagnosis is very easy. Illness among the cohabitants. Say the patient has inguinal itch, the patient 1. Another member in the family is also having the same, then inguinal itch. Third member in the family is also having the same. Then you consider it's a contagious disease. The identification is easy. That etiological diagnosis is easy. Illness among the family members. You see that there are about 10 family members. And in 3 generations, the disease is seen. Then probably you say that it is inherited one. You consider that it is an inherited one. So inherited, then more number of family members are affected. Or if the person has developed the symptoms immediately after the exposure. Say for example, the person is standing for about 5 hours in the sun and then developed the unconsciousness, then you have a reason. The patient has consumed the jackfruit in the morning and in the afternoon the patient had vomiting and diarrhea. There is a reason. That is exposure, symptom developing immediately after the exposure. If that is the case, then it is possible. And based on these one or the other criteria, you are supposed to identify an Atma Satmya. That means as soon as the person is exposed to a particular substance, the person develops the symptoms like that of the exposure to the Raja or Duma, the person has unprecedented sneezing. Then you have the reason, Raja and Duma as the cause. Such a causal relation is possible in such conditions. And in most of the conditions, probably the causal relation is identifying the cause. It may not be possible, but whenever it is possible, you are supposed to follow. So, more people exposed, only one suffer. If for the same etiological factor, if about 50 people are exposed, if only 2 or 3 is suffering, then how to decide that that particular etiological factor is the cause in these patients? That's very difficult to decide. Anyway, whenever possible, the determination of the cause is possible, then you are supposed to know. Then about the naming of the disease. Very simple. If you have identified the Pratyatma Linga, Atisara as the Pratyatma Linga, diagnosis Atisara. Chardi as the Pratyatma Linga, Chardi is diagnosed. Shwasa as the Pratyatma Linga, Shwasa is the diagnosis. But this is not the case in every case, because naming of the disease is different in different occasions. Say for example, Panatya, Kalaya Kanja, or Acharana Yoni Vyapak, where the etiology itself is considered as the name of the disease. And Prameha Pidaka, where predisposing illness is being considered as considered for the name of the disease. Or Grahani Yoni Vyapat Mukaroga, where the structure affected itself is considered for the naming of the disease. And organ and symptoms, that is Hridaya is organ, Shula is a symptom, Pada is organ, Dari is a symptom. And accordingly the naming of the disease is being made. Morbid physiology, that is Nidra Nasha, that is a diagnosis. Dosha involved Vata Vyadhi. And morbidity of dosha, Amla Pitta and Shita Pitta, where the dosha involved, that is being considered for the naming. Dhatu affected Shukra Dushti. And structural damage, Sandhi Moksha and Guda Brahmsha. And leading presentation, Jwara Atisara Chardhi Shwasa. And identification of the Pratyatma Linga is most helpful in diagnosing if the leading presentation itself is considered for the diagnosis purposes. And interacting dosha and dosha Rakta Pitta. And simile of the symptom Gulma and Brahma, incidence the Adyavata. So anyway, this is the criteria for naming the disease in the Ayurvedic literature. And among that, Jwara Atisara Chardhi Shwasa is the most common. And where the Pratyatma Linga itself is considered as the criteria for naming the disease, and accordingly the disease is diagnosed. And if that is not the case, then you have the other naming criteria. Based on that, you can name the disease based on the other criteria. So diagnosis of the disease based on the Pratyatma Linga, Udara Shula, Adman, Atisara. If that is the case, then identification of Pratyatma Linga itself is helpful in that. If you have identified Shula as a Pratyatma Linga, diagnosis will Udara Shula. So anyway, you have analyzed the dosha, dushas, rotas, sancharasthana, Pratyatma Linga, everything, and may have made a diagnosis. And once you have made a diagnosis, you are supposed to tally description. You see that the signs and symptoms that are mentioned in the literature all tally with that of the text. Or does it also say something else? And you see that the Samprapti Ghataka that you have determined is equal to the one mentioned in the literature. That particular tallying, if it is tallied, then your diagnosis is okay. The next step is, if you are diagnosed as Atisara, the diagnosis is not complete. You have to say that it is Vatajatsara, Pittajatsara, Kafajatsara. If you say that the Vata factor, then you have to say diagnosis is not complete, then you have to tell Vatanabandhi, Pittanabandhi, Kapanabandhi. That's about naming of the type of the disease. And how will you name the type of the disease? That is identifying the dominance of the dosha. Vatadisara is a diagnosis if the dominance of Vata dosha is present as per the symptomatology. And identifying the dominance of the dosha or associated symptom or character of the leading symptom. These are the criteria. And how about identifying the dominance of the dosha in a given patient? In a given patient, it is the number of symptoms that represent a particular dosha. Whichever has got the more number, that will say about the dominance of the dosha. That's the easiest way and a rational way of identifying. And this may not be possible every time. Then you have the understanding of the Prakriti Sama Samavaya Samprapti and the Sapratyanika Samprapti. In the sense, Prakriti Sama Samavaya Samprapti, in the sense, the symptomatology is in accordance with the dosha involved. If that is the case, then you have a reason for analyzing the symptomatology for the diagnostic purpose of the type. That means symptoms are in accordance with the dosha itself. And symptoms may not be in accordance with the dosha. It may be totally different. Then you have to depend upon, that is known as Vikriti Vishama Samaveta Samprapti. If that is the case, you have to depend upon the text itself. Say for example, symptoms of Vata Jvara, Pitta Jvara, Kapha Jvara, all these three symptoms are present, then you will make a diagnosis of Sannipata Jvara, that is Prakriti Sama Samavaya Sannipata Jvara, because symptoms of all the three are present. Instead, Kshanedaha Kshaneshita Matsasandhi Surja Shasrave Kalsharakti Nirbhukne Chapi Lokine. If these symptoms are present, these symptoms are neither present in Vata Jwara, nor in Pitta Jwara, nor in Kapha Jwara, but it is present in Sannipata Jwara. The reason is that particular Sannipata Jwara is Vikriti Vishama Samaveta Sannipata Jwara. And therefore, if any particular disease, if it is a Prakriti Samavaya, as in case of the Atisara, then determining the dosha in accordance, determining the type of the disease in accordance with the dominance of the dosha, as indicated by the symptomatology, is more than enough. And if the Vikriti Vishama Samaveta Samprapti is present, probably you will not be able to determine on the basis of the symptoms that represent a dosha. Rather, it is a combination of the symptom that is enlisted in the literature, and you are supposed to match those symptoms with that of the patient's presentation. Then only you will be able to say that what is the type of the disease as per the symptomatology present. The another one is determination of the dominance of the dosha. You may make it on the basis of the number of symptoms. But you have another way that's about Sapratyanika dosha and Nipratyanika dosha Samprapti. These are the two Samprapti. Sapratyanika dosha in the sense, the dosha that produces the symptom when the environmental or surrounding factors are favorable. And it will be totally silent when the surrounding factors or supportive factors are not supporting. Say, for example, the Kapha dosha. Morning hour is a supportive factor. And the symptoms worsen in the morning hour and symptoms subside in the evening hour, because it is the time of Vata dosha. Immediately after the food, if the symptoms develop, immediately after the food, if the symptom develops, then you said it is because of the Kapha, because it is a Kapha time. And such, the exacerbations and the remissions in the severity of the symptoms or fluctuation in the severity of the symptoms in accordance with presence or absence of Pratyanika factors, that is opposing factors. That's in time of diurnal time, morning, afternoon, evening, nocturnal time, early phase of the night, middle phase of the night, late phase of the night, or the Rutu, Vasanta Rutu or the Varsha Rutu, or it may be even in the form of the time related to the food intake, immediately after food or sometime after the food or late time after the food. So based on this particular variation, if the symptoms fluctuate, then we call it as the Sapratyanika Samprapti. And Sapratyanika Samprapti, where they are defining the dominance of the dosha is based on the aggravating factor that is made easy. And that's another way of determining the type of the dosha. And maybe in accordance with the dosha involved, Prakriti Samavaya Samprapti, then definitely you will go according to the symptom manifest. May not tally the dosha involved if the Samprapti is Vikriti Vishama Samavaya Samprapti. Therefore, you have to depend upon the matching the symptom that is mentioned in the text and the present in the same symptom patient. And then associated symptoms are crucial if the Nishpratyanika Samprapti is present. Sapratyanika Samprapti, if it is present, then you will consider something about the dosha that is dominant based on the when it will. Based on the Sapratyanika nation, you will be able to decide the dominance of dosha. If it is Nishpratyanika, then you have to consider about the symptoms that are mentioned in the or associated symptoms that are mentioned in the disease itself. Say, for example, the Pitta dosha, Pittatisara is present. Pittatisara symptoms are mentioned, including the bleeding. And those symptoms, if they are present, then immediately you say Pitta, that is associated symptoms. If the Ashukari, Nishpratyanika manifestation is there, in such situations you have to consider about the associated symptom for determining. Tulya Dushya Desha Rutu Prakrititvad Maharambo Nishpratyaniko Bhavyadir Jayate. And it is been said that if all these factors, those Dushya, Desha and Rutu Prakriti, if they belong to the same category, the person is likely to suffer from Nishpratyanika manifestation, where from morning to evening it will continue and persist. There will not be any fluctuation in accordance with the time factor, now in accordance with the food, in accordance with the Rutu. That is considered the Nishpratyanika Samprapti, where you will be dependent upon only the associated symptoms. So based either on the associated symptoms or on the basis of the number of symptoms, or on the basis of Saprathika factor, you can determine the associated dosha or secondary this dosha. It's a modifying dosha. And you have third criteria is identify dosha that are modified the presentation. Determine the dominance of the dosha by the modifying dosha. Dry cough and productive cough. Cough is caused by the kapha dosha for diagnosed as kasa. And dry cough is present and it's vataja kasa. Productive cough it is present and you can call it as kaphaja kasa. That is a modification. White sputum is present, then you call it as vataja kasa. And yellow sputum is present, then you consider it as pitta jakasa, or yellow white sputum when it is present, then you say that it is kapha jakasa. Yellow is present, then you call it as pitta jakasa. And worsening of the day or worsening of this shota in the day or night, accordingly that will help the diagnosis. This is about the modification. So based on the modification, you will be able to make a diagnosis of type of the disease. So finalize the type of the disease. First is the name of the disease based on dosha, srotas involvement, srotas analysis and the sampraptisthana and the vyaktisthana and the pratyatmalinga. And then analyze the second or the type of the disease. That's by the dominance of the dosha. By the dominance of type of the disease is diagnosed in most occasions. Samprapti Kataka may be same in subtype of the disease. There are some of the occasions where this criteria may not be sufficient. Say, for example, in case of the Shwasa. Types of the Shwasa are not determined on the basis of the dominance of the dosha. Rather, it is determined on the basis of the character of the leading symptom. This is also true so far as the Shwasa, Kasa, Hikka is concerned. And in case of the Shwasa, it's either it is a Mahashwasa, Urdhva Shwasa, Chinna Shwasa. All these are considered to be, Urdhva, Maha, Chinna Shwasa, Tamaka Shwasa or Shuddha Shwasa, all considered to be the Kapha dosha dominant diseases. And it is the Rasodhatu which is involved. There is no difference in that. So, predominance of the dosha, based on that, you will not be able to differentiate because the presentation is also almost equal. Then how about diagnosing the Shwasa? Then it is based on the leading or character of the leading symptom. Character of the leading symptom say that if the patient has intense breathing that can be heard from a distance place, then you call it as Mahashwasa. If the person has a breathing that is mostly exhaling with a little or no inspiration, then you call it as Urdhva Shwasa. If the person has a labored breathing, then you call it as a Tamaka Shwasa. If the patient exhibits a phase of a respiration, alternative phase of respiration and no respiration, then you call it as Chinna Shwasa. That means in all the occasions, it is a characteristic feature of the leading symptom that will help you to diagnose as the different types. So that should be the way. Once the diagnosis is complete, once the name of the disease and type of the disease is known, diagnosis is not complete, then you have to know something about the Vyadhi Avastha. You have to say about Pururupadi Avastha. You have to say about the prognostic stage. You have to say something about Sama and Nirama stage and Bahu, Madhya, Alpadosha Avastha, acute and chronic. And so far as the progressive dosha stage is, progressive state is concerned, Pururupa, Rupa, Asadhya, Upadrava, Arishta Lakshana, and the stage is diagnosed from in the reverse order. If the patient has the symptoms and in that Arishta Lakshana is present, it is Arishta Lakshana Avastha. If no Arishta Lakshana is present, then you have to look for Upadrava. Upadrava is present, Upadrava. No Upadrava is present, then go for the Sadhya, Asadhya Lakshana Avastha. If the Asadhya Lakshanas are present, definitely you say that the Asadhya Lakshana Avastha. If none of them is present, then you consider Rupa Avastha. If the Rupa itself is not manifested, then you consider as Pura Rupa Avastha. That means you will be determining from the reverse order, and if any symptom suggests of a particular stage is present, then that particular stage of the disease is named. So it is assessed in the reverse order. Presence of any symptom of the stage is confirmed. Presence of Pratyatma confirms the Rupa stage. And so far as the Rupa stage is concerned, Rupa stage is diagnosed if the Pratyatmalinga is present. Absence of Pratyatmalinga, that means it is Pura Rupa stage. If the Pratyatmalinga is not developed, then it is Pura Rupa stage. Then you have to decide that Bahudosha Avastha. And you have Avipaka, Arujustaulyam, Panduta, Gauram, Klama. You have a criteria mentioned in the Panchakarma. And that cannot be useful in every occasion. And therefore, how you have to do is symptoms of Bahudosha Avastha, if it is present, that is Avipaka Panduka Varam Klama, Pinaka, Kotakandu, Nam Sambo or the Revacha. If it is present, then you will make a Bodoshavasta. And the second is number of symptoms. If the patient, if the disease has got about 50 symptoms, if all the 50 symptoms are present, that is Bodoshavasta. If only few symptoms are present, that is Balpadoshavasta. That means in case of the sleep, there are 10 symptoms. In case of the Pandu, there are 50 symptoms. And in Pandu, when 10 symptoms are present, then we consider it as Alpadoshavasta, because possible symptoms in case of the Pandu itself is 50. And 10 symptoms in case of the Sleepada is considered to be the Bodoshavasta. The reason is possible symptoms in case of the Sleepada itself is 10. And all the 10 are present. Therefore, number of symptoms that are present is a relative one, relative to the diagnosis. Some disease has got the multiple symptoms, some diagnosis has got a very minimal symptom. Accordingly, you say that the Bodoshavasta or Alpadoshavasta. Functional disability. If because of the symptoms the person is restricted to the bed, then you call it as Bodoshavasta. And with the symptomatology, if the patient is able to continue his profession, then you call it as Alpadoshavasta. There is another criteria. Then about the area of the distribution of symptoms. If the eruption is present, some oozing is present, itching is present, if it is present only in the little finger, then you call it as Alpadoshavasta. And if the same thing is present in the whole body, then you consider Bodoshavasta. That's about area of distribution. Then about the nature of the disease, this is most important. There are diseases that are known as Mahavyadhi. Say, for example, the Kushta. If the symptoms of Kushta may not be severe, if the symptom or area affected may be very small area within the body, and the disease also does not have any chronicity at all, and nothing serious, the patient is able to do all work, then also the Kushta is considered to be Bodoshavasta from the day one. That's by rule. It doesn't follow any of these particular rules. If a patient has a small symptom in the little finger, in the tip of the little finger, and if you have made a diagnosis of Kushta, then it is always considered Bodoshavasta. This is very particular for the Mahakushta, it is less particular for the Shudra Kushta, but so the Mahakushta is concerned, from the day one it is considered to be the Bodoshavasta. Similarly, the Jalodhara. If the Jalodhara is diagnosed in any stage, then it is always considered to be the Bodoshavasta. Vatavyadhi. Particularly Mahavyadhi and Shudra Vatavyadhi is the two category. Mahavatavyadhi is considered to be the Bodoshavasta all the times. This is about based on the nature of illness. Visarpa is considered to be the Bodoshavasta. So anyway, you have the different criteria of determining the Bodoshavasta. If the symptoms are of Bodoshavasta present, definitely. If they are not the case, based on the number of symptoms, based on the chronicity, based on the distribution of the symptoms, extent of distribution, you will be able to say that a Bodoshavasta or Alpadoshavasta. Then you have to decide about Sadhya and Asadhyavasta. Sadhya and Asadhya Lakshana is mentioned in the literature. There, the same has to be considered. Otherwise, you have the general criteria of determining the Sadhya and Asadhyavasta. That is, Rupa, Pururupa, if they are minimum. And if the Dosha and Dusha, if they are belonging to the different category, then you consider that it is Sadhya. So similarly, that particular criteria has to be adopted. Or presence of all possible symptoms, that is always suggestive of Sadhyata. And severe functional disability, if it is present, then also you consider that it is less easy to cure or difficult to cure, or it is impossible to cure. Sama and Nirama Avastha, that has to be determined in any way. So Sama and Nirama, it is specified for some of the diseases, it is not specified for other diseases. Wherever it is specified, that has to be considered. Wherever it is not specified, you are supposed to follow the general rule. And so far as the general rule is concerned, it is related to the Koshtagata Ama only, not the other one. That is, if the patient has a lack of taste, if the patient has a lack of interest to take the food, and if the patient has distension of the abdomen, if the patient has constipation, these are all the symptoms that are suggestive of Ama in the Kosta. And that itself is need to be determined. And if this, say for example, in case of the Jwara, you will not be following the general principle that the specific rule is mentioned. For the Atisara is also specific rule is mentioned for determining the Sama and Nirama. For Grahani it is mentioned. For Vidradi it is mentioned. So wherever it is mentioned, you have to follow the same criteria for determining the Sama and Nirama. And if in other diseases where it is not mentioned, you are supposed to follow the Sama and Nirama stage as the general rule. And Ama related to Jatragni only. And why this particular, the importance for the Sama and Nirama Avastha, patient is suffering from the Pakshagata. About Sama and Nirama Avastha, In the case, patient who is suffering from the Pakshagata is also having lack of taste in the mouth, nausea and other symptoms, then you consider it Samavastha. And this particular Samavastha may be related with the disease, may not be related with the disease. So far as the Pakshagata is concerned, it is unrelated with the disease. But Sama and Nirama we determine because next phase of this particular practice is you are supposed to prescribe the medication. Shodhana or the Shamana is based on exploiting the ability of the gastrointestinal system. If you are giving the Shamana treatment, then you will be giving 12 grams of churna. You will be giving 50 ml of the kachaya. You will be giving 150 ml of the aswarishta. And if it is the ghee, then you will be giving about 150 ml to 200 ml. All these therapeutic medicine, therapeutic approaches demand strong gastric fire. And since the strong gastric fire is required for the treatment, in all the cases you consider Sama and Nirama stage. In any disease, if you are identified Sama stage, then convert into Nirama stage. And in case of the Vata Vyadhi, Sama and Nirama is gastrointestinal tract. And it is unrelated to the Pakshagata. Since you are treating the patient, Sama state in the patient is required for planning the treatment. You will be assessing Sama and Nirama stage based on these criteria. General criteria just for knowing about the state of gastrointestinal tract, because optimal state is required for that, and therefore that you need to do that. Hello. Hello. Namaste. ನಾನು ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಓಕೆ ಓಕೆ ಚೇಂಬರಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೇನೆ. So Sama Nirama Avastha, spot the specific symptoms of Sama and Nirama stage, example Jvara Atisara, and if they are not that, then you follow the Jatragni one. The purpose of doing that is because in the next phase of the treatment, you will be you need to say something about you need to plan the treatment that depends upon the ability of the Agni. Then think about the Nava and Jirna Avastha. If it is specified in the literature, the same criteria. If it is not specified in the literature, say for example, the Jvara it is being specified. And when it is not, and for Atisara like that, it is Ashukara that is being specified. Samvatsara cannot be, but where it is not specified, then Anatikranta Samvatsaram, Anatikranta Vatsaratvam. So one Samvatsara is considered to be the new, and more than that is considered to be a chronic, that is general truth. Wherever it is not specified for the disease, and if it is, and then about the Dhatukata Avastha, that also you need to specify. So Dhatukata Avastha based on the symptoms. Class aliddene ಒಂದು ನಿಮಿಷ, ಇನ್ನು 5 ನಿಮಿಷ ಮುಗಿತದೆ. So that's about that, and this is about the whole diagnosis. And based on that, based on the diagnosis, you will be making a prescription, Shadopakrama, whatever the Shadopakrama that is required, that you will be planning. That's how you plan. So to sum up what is being said, make a diagnosis based on the determination of the Samprapti Kataka, determine the dosha, determine the dosha, determine the srotas, and decide that what is the Sancharasthana, and decide that what is the Vyaktisthana, and most important is the Pratyatmalinga. Based on that, you just first, in the first step, you make a name of the diagnosis, name of the disease, and in the second step, you make an approach, you make an attempt to know about the type of the disease. That's based on the predominance of the dosha that is involved, either on the basis of the number, or on the basis of the Sapratinikata, or on the basis of the associated symptom mentioned in the literature. You make the type of the disease. Once that particular type of the disease is over, first step of the diagnosis is over, second step is assessing the stage. It may be the Pururupa Avastha, it may be the Sadhya Asadhya Avastha, it may be the Sama Nirama Avastha, or it may be the Navina Jirna Avastha. Whatever it may be, you determine that. Once you determine the stage of the diagnosis is over, now it is time for writing the prescription. This is enough for today. And I once again thank Dr. Narayan Nambi and also the Shibu Varghese, Dr. Shibu, for giving me an opportunity to speak to you people. And if you have any questions right now, definitely I shall be making an attempt to answer.
Thank you, sir, for your
Welcome.
wonderful speech. I think there are many questions. Sir, can you change your hostship just to ourselves or to me in the right side? Can you just change the hostship so that I can unmute some people? Okay, Dr. Geeta, I think you want to ask me something. Please, Dr. Geeta. Hello.
Yes.
If anybody want to ask questions, please. I think they are not unmuted, sir. Sir, I think from your side, can you please unmute, sir, all people?
What I have to do?
On your, since we are transferred you as a host, just click on there on the right side. You just, you have option there, unmute all.
Mute all.
Yeah, unmute all, unmute all.
Now it says that Ashtangam is the host.
Okay, okay. Ramya, now I think you, Ramya, I think you have raised your hand. I think you can ask question. Dr. Ramya.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Namaskaram, sir.
Namaste.
Very happy to hear from you because I'm Ramya. I'm working in Department of Panchakarma at Ashtangam Ayurveda Vidyapeetham. And we have
Right.
heard a lot about you from your students who are our teachers in Kerala. My question to you is, sir, as a clinician and as an academician, if with your so much of experience and the vast kind of experience that you had in clinics as a teacher, as a clinician, what would be the most important 3 things that you would advise us as upcoming teachers that we should follow daily or in our clinical life, both as a clinician as well as an academic?
It seems to be a very broad question. There is nothing specific in that. Anyway, a right approach for the diagnosis and methodical way of prescribing with the textual support, rationality, that itself should be the way. And since whatever you are doing in front of the students will be learning. That means there should be a rationality. If you prescribe a Sudarshana Churna, and if you have made a right diagnosis of Jora, and you have given the Sudarshana Churna as the prescription, and if the patient has responded very well, then probably that particular the student who also understands that it's according to the principle you have made a diagnosis, according to the principle you have prescribed, and according to the prognosis the patient has shown a response. And if this is shown to the patient, shown to the students, probably the students will appreciate the subject a lot. So I shall tell you there are different ways of expressing the therapeutic effect. Some people will be based on the guna principle. Some people say something about the rasa principle. Something say about the Panchamahabhuta principle. There are different principles. Based on that, you will be making a prescription. And among those different ways of identifying a particular prescription, best way that Charaka has adopted is the Agraushadhi principle. Agraushadhi principle in the sense Musta Parapatakam, Jore, Drajalam, Dubbash, Losotom, Raja, Sarvis, Bastij, Girijam, Meha, Shudatri, Nishe. If your prescription is in accordance with this, if it is available, then probably your response or your therapeutic effect is maximum. Where you will not be considering something about the dosha, you know, something about the rasa, guna, virya, vipaka, but you will be considering the karma of that. And karma of that particular, the drug is most important, and for a specific diagnosis, specific prescription is the rule. And if your diagnosis is Atisara, and what is mentioned in the literature, Kutaja, is prescribed, that is the best prescription. And you have made a diagnosis of Atisara for the Grahani, you are likely to fail. And therefore, your approach should be very particular and in the diagnosis and also the prescription. And if your prescription is based on the Agroshati principle, then your success is the best one.
As an academician, sir.
Yes, academic, what I'm telling is, no, you can you give me or a very specific question instead of saying a broad question as how to impress the students.
Sir, like when we are into our practice and when we are into our teaching career, many times what happens is we get confined to our own subject one point. Then when once we go on practicing cases, we try to prescribe medicine for the condition and to exactly analyze Samprapti or all those things doesn't, even though we want, it doesn't happen practically, sir. So do you think everyday reading and analyzing these things are really important, at least during our initial years of career as a teacher and an academician, or is this okay?
See, if anybody says that every day you will be analyzing the dosha, samprapti, kata, everything, only after that treatment has to be given, definitely it is the case. And if you ask me that are you doing the same, definitely I am doing the same. Then how about you see about 50 patients in 3 hours, how it is possible to analyze all those? But so far as my understanding related to the diagnosis is concerned, dosha, dusha and its analysis is a mental analysis that happens spontaneously as soon as the symptom is analyzed. And I will not take much time to make a diagnosis of Pakshagata. I will not take much time for making a diagnosis of Dhatukshaja Pakshagata or Margarvanaja Pakshagata. I may not take much time to decide that is it Nidanaja Pakshagata. Or I will be able to free to or easy to diagnose it as Kevala Vataja Pakshagata, Samsarga Vataja Pakshagata, or Avarana Vataja Pakshagata. This diagnosis is very methodical and it will not take much time. When I have this particular clinical understanding, precise understanding of the description made in the literature, then the approach will also be very simple. And if you ask that, how about the plan prescribing based on dosham, balam, kalam, analam, prakritimaya, sattvam, sattvam, praharam, avastha, pratakvidaha. This is also mentioned in the literature. And for the success, you are supposed to consider all these. And will you consider? Definitely, I shall consider this also. And sometimes the final prescription, when it is written, knowingly or unknowingly, all these are being considered. And if the patient is 10-year-old, my prescription of Tribhuvanakirti Rasa is 1 TID. And if the patient is about 15 years, then my prescription is the 2 TID. And how I made this particular difference, that is by the consideration of the via itself. And the patient has got the hello. And dosham dusham balam kalam, and the patient has got the joint pain. And if the female is somewhere around the age of 30 years, I may not prescribe the Chitraka because it can worsen the bleeding. That means I have considered that also. And in that particular case, I shall prescribe Rasna. And a patient who is having the constipation and I have to prescribe this particular medicine for the Ekakushta, I may not be prescribing the Kutaja because it may worsen that. In other words to say, dosha, dusha, bala, kala, anala, prakriti, vaya, everything will be analyzed spontaneously. It's so happening that it's rapidly happening. With the due understanding only, you will be writing the final prescription. With the due understanding only, your prescription is written. And these matters are so well adopted in the methodology that spontaneously it happens and quickly you will be able to do that. And if you when you write a final prescription, if anybody asks that why you are not written the Chitraka, then you say that she is a 30-year-old lady, she may have excessive bleeding. And when you say that it is 150 ml of Asava you have given, then you consider that the kapha is dominant in that particular, because all these calculations goes hand in hand. And if you analyze one after the other, and to analyze and to give it to the students, you may require 15 minutes or 20 minutes to discuss about this. But so far as prescription writing is concerned, it's a matter of about a minute or two. All these come into account at a time and the prescription is written. Now you tell me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
What is mentioned in the literature And if you make the student to understand, I shall give you a small example. Whenever I speak something about the Vayo Dhatu Kshayat Kopa Margasya Avaranenava, and is about the cause of the Vata Vyadi, everywhere, everybody will have a confusion what's about this particular Dhatu Kshaya. And I take about 1 hour meaning, and in the context of Vata Vyadi, it refers to the Snayu, which is Snayu and Kandar, which is the Upadhatu. And when I complete that particular argument, and my lecture becomes very simple. And if I say that what is Dhatu affected in Akshepaka, what is the Dhatu affected in Pakshagata, what is the Dhatu which is affected in Bahyayama, what is the Dhatu which is affected in Antarayama, what is the Dhatu which is affected in the Gridasi, everything is made easy because I have cleared that what you mean by the Dhatu in the context of Dhatu Kshaya. And similarly, the Marga Avarana, when I say that the Marga refers to Rasalakta Marga and Avarana refers to the obliteration, this particular meaning is fixed to that. Everywhere I should stick to that, everywhere I should show the students that the same thing. Accordingly, I should be planning the treatment. This is how what the information that is made, written in the literature, the same should be appreciated in the patients also. That should be shown to the student. The student will understand very quickly and appreciate your knowledge. And according to your proper diagnosis, and when you are prescribing the right prescription and the patient responding to the same, the student also appreciates it very well. So a successful clinician, and if there are about 10 people, 10 teachers in the college, and whom the students will appreciate the most, not the person who speaks for 1 hour or 2 hours in the lecture in the class, rather the one who sits 2 hours in the OPD and sees 50 patients, and the 50 patients are responded, the student will appreciate that. Therefore, a better clinician is best appreciated by the students rather than a great orator who can cut jokes in the classes. So be a clinician and see that your efficiency is more in the clinics that the students appreciate. Any more? Shall I say bye-bye then?
No, sir. I have one more question, sir.
Yes.
When I was your student at 2000,
One?
for a back pain, sir, when I was your student in SDM, for a back pain, you were using Vishamushti Vadi.
Yes.
And after 10 years, when I came there, you are using another set of medicine. Few months before when I came there, you are using Lashuna Rasayana for the back pain cases in IPD. So as a clinician, how was the evolution that you are taking in the process, and how this
Probably
could be
10 or 15 years back when I'm using the Vishamushti, and 2 years back when you came, I was using the Lashuna. My principle related to the understanding of the disease has not changed at all. I shall give you an example. If the patient is suffering from an illness, that's probably the Vata Vyadi, that's about 15 to 20 Vata Vyadi, which is mentioned in the literature of, in the chapter of Vata Vyadi itself. That's about Dhamani and Sira, Kandara and the Snayu, these are being affected. And when these are being affected, the presentation is fourfold. One is the movement loss, the second one is movement excess. And sensory is concerned, either it is sensory loss or it is sensory excess. Sensory loss is Prasupti, movement loss is Pakshagata, excess movement is Akshepaka, and excessive sensation is Shuddha. These are the presentations. When the patient has a Pakshagata, probably I may not prescribe the Vishamushti. When the patient has the Gridasi, I am likely to prescribe the Vishamushti. The reason is Vishamushti is more appropriate so far as the pain is concerned. When the patient has excessive movement, I shall prescribe the Sachara. I may not be prescribing the Bala because Sachara is more appropriate so far as the involuntary movements are concerned or Atma Ukta is concerned. That's more appropriate. When the person has got the... Hello. And when the person has got the loss of strength in the half of the body, I shall prescribe Bala. When the patient has a loss of sensation in the same body, then I shall prescribe Shatavari. And in total, what I'm saying is, depending upon the symptomatology, there are best treatment that can be prescribed. When I'm prescribing a medicine, the number one is Shamana medicine. The number two is the symptomatic approach. Number three is the Rasayana. And when what you are speaking about the Vishamushti, that's actually the Shamana Chikitsa. And what about the Lashana? That's about the Rasayana Chikitsa. And the dosage and objective of Rasayana Chikitsa and dosage and objective of Shamana Chikitsa is totally different. Now also I stick to this Vishamusti. Now also I prescribe the Lashana both. And when I'm thinking about the Shamana medication is the main approach, then I shall be very particular about the Vishamusti or the Nirgundi as the main medication, or Shallaka as the main medication. And the principle remains the same. When multiple options are there, you have Vishamusti is one option, Dashana is the second option. Both the options now also it is being given.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
More questions?
Sir, namaste, sir.
Mm.
Sir, like as we are discussing about the diagnosis and the management aspects, since yesterday, if you've gone through the social media, it is filled with the Patanjali and Baba Ramdev's, the tablets which are been, advertised for the purpose of COVID-19. I would like to know, as a clinician, if I sit in a clinic and as I get approached by the patients with such queries related with the social media and the recent updates and the news, I would like to know what's your take on that, sir. How would you
My take on
this Baba Ramdev's the tablet or the medications which they have come up?
Yes, definitely. See, there are medicines, and that will be working on the different disease statuses. And present status is COVID-19, where the government has taken a rule that no Ayurveda medicine should be prescribed to the patient. And there should not be any claim unless and until it is being claimed. Now the question is, if anybody comes to you with a diagnosis of corona and if they ask you to plan a prescription, definitely you have the reasons and you have a rationality of prescribing. And the government right now, it says that the corona is a novel one, it's a new one. And therefore there is no any evidence saying that a particular medicine is working. And of course, nobody has got an evidence because it is considered to be a novel one, a new virus, and we do not have any. And how about that particular virus being treated by the Ayurvedic medicine and it is being treated by the allopathic medicine? Allopathic people say that it is related to that of the immune, and you suppress the immune, give the steroid, the symptoms will subside. There is no any evidence for that even. Evidence in the sense there is a methodical way of establishing an evidence. Not that I have given a patient as a responded, that is not considered as an evidence. So in that particular way, if I have to prescribe or market any medicine for the corona, right now it is not possible because evidence cannot be developed in a short duration of about a month, 2 or 3. And preliminary works are being done by the Baba Ramdev, where you have seen that immunity increases. And if a person has been treated with an Ayurvedic medicine and the immunity, how about the immunity, is it improved or not? There are criteria to determine that. And a patient who is suffering from the corona, there are different criteria to decide that is it present or is it cured. And what Ramdev is claiming is they are capable of improving the immunity, not curing the corona. And so far as Ashwagandha is concerned, that can improve. The Ayush Kvata is concerned, that can also improve. Chavanaprasha can also improve. That you have evidences of these medicines that are improving immunity. And there are evidences that says that the people who have got better immunity, they survive the illness. They will not succumb to death if the immunity is present. These are the two distinct statements from two distinct community. And when it is combined together, you have an implied meaning that the medicines that are mentioned in Ayurveda may be effective in corona, And the present status is it's only the maybe. And since we are not able to say that it will do that or it will cure that particular ascertained sentences cannot be said, that does not mean that it is also not useless. So you are somewhere in the middle that you have medication that can improve the immunity, and improving the immunity is a major treatment for corona, and therefore it may work in that. And that's what our Ramdev is saying, that the medicines are improving the immunity. The research are saying that they will improve the immunity, and therefore it may work. And definitely it will work. Then it may take some more time. The government has to permit the patients to treat Ayurvedic medicines and see that it is cured, and proper evidence are being developed, and then only it can be said. Right now it's too early to say that the medicines will cure that, but you have medicines to improve the immunity, and people who have a better immunity, they have got a better prognosis. That's a known factor. That's the only thing that you can say.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, good evening, sir. I am Rakesh from Bangalore, sir. I am a practitioner in Ayurveda hospitals. Sir, I have a question, that is, if a patient comes with multiple comorbidities, that is, comorbidities,
Okay.
that is, a Pakshagata patients having, liver failure or a CKD and multiple comorbidities, and is in on a Bedavastha or in a very complicated state. On what parameters would we diagnose which one, or what if there's Anyonya Avarana amongst all the dhatus and things like it? It's a little complicated. For example, after from the neuro ICU or in ICU cases of Pakshagata, how do we diagnose that, which has to be treated first, that which parameter has to be treated first, Sroto Pariksha, which has to be done first, which has to be attended first? What will be the crucial point at that point of time to diagnose and then treat, sir?
So if the comorbidity is present, comorbidity should be diagnosed. There is no problem in that. So far as the present day diagnosis is concerned, who is in the ICU and you are sitting here and you are supposed to make a diagnosis, the patient who is suffering from the Hridroga, say for example, the patient is suffering from the Hridroga.
Yeah.
First symptom of the Hridroga may be the death.
Correct.
May not be the same in many, but the first symptom of the Hridroga may be a death. But is there any other way of assessing that Hridroga is present in the patient? So far as the Ayurvedic literature is concerned, there is nothing. But you have many other methodologies which is available in the, which is practiced in the modern medicine, that's like that of the angiogram and the others.
Correct.
And they are able to say that the patient has the cardiac disorder and they can treat accordingly. And why you need to wait until the death happens? And therefore, what we do is, for all the diagnoses, we'll make an Ayurvedic diagnosis. Say, for example, patients who are suffering from the stroke, we have a diagnosis of the Shiromarma Vigata as the diagnosis. And for the Hridroga, we have got the diagnosis of myocardial infarction. So in that particular, we make an alternative diagnosis. And the same investigation methodology which is mentioned for that is inculcated for your diagnosis, and so that your diagnosis is made easy. But so far as the Vyadhi Sankara is concerned, comorbidities are concerned, that need to be identified. And literature says that patient may be suffering from the Margavarna. Margavarna on different locations can cause different manifestations. Margavarna in the leg, it causes the Vatarakta. Margavarna in the Hridaya, it causes the Hridroga. Margavarna in the Shiras, it causes the Vata Vyadhi. Margavarna in the Shiras, it causes the Vataja Unmada. Margavarna in the Basti, it causes the Mutro Kasada. In that particular way, Margavarna is the same illness and producing manifestations at different locations. And in the Charaka also has said that he says that the list of diseases that will occur if the patient is not treated for the Margavarna. That's about the comorbidities. Or if you see the Samprapti of a Staurya in case of the Sushuddha, says that there will be excessive accumulation of fat, the patient will gain weight. At the same time, there will be multiple diseases that are related to that of the obliteration of the vessels. And all this, that's why a patient who has got the Hridroga may suffer from the stroke. A patient who has got the stroke may have the comorbidity of Hridroga. A patient who is having the stroke may have the comorbidity of Shonika Bichandana. In that particular way, multiple comorbidities may be present. Accordingly, it has to be diagnosed. All has to have a exact treatment.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Anyone else?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Can ask.
So one doubt, sir. Nowadays, vitamin D, vitamin B12 deficiency is the main cause they are telling for many of the problems. Could you please help on what can be done when people come and ask, is that or how to improve that? Even COVID, they are telling that the same reason.
So vitamin D, if the deficiency is diagnosed, it's actually related to the asthikshaya and the asthisaucheria. Asthikshaya chikitsa has to be followed. It is very simple in that particular sense. And if the medication is concerned, then you have the Pravada Panchamrita or the Aksha, the Gugulu that can be prescribed that will maintain that. Straightforward if the patient has. So you need not wait until the symptoms of asthikshaya or the symptoms of asthisaucheria happen, but you can straight away if those tests are positive, you can think about supplementing the bone by these medications or Sudhavarga drugs. This is also similar so far as the COVID-19 is concerned. You make a diagnosis of Jora, you make a diagnosis of Samajura and Niramajura. Accordingly, you plan the treatment. That's the only option that is available. Yes, Nick. Is it okay?
Thank you, sir.
I think
good evening,
it's
sir.
a time for conclusion. Please, please. Okay, yes, Raj, you can ask.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, one patient with 5-year-old, sir, diagnosed with a subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. So this is the first time I heard this case. So any suggestion from our end? This is mostly it's a fatal disease. I've researched. So any suggestions from our end, sir?
It's being diagnosed as Balagraha. Very particularly if the convulsions are also present, then it is considered as Skandapasmara. And usually
Okay,
these are being best treated by the initial treatment of Siddharthaka Yoga. That is followed by the Vata Vyadhi Chikitsa will give the response. And as far as the response is concerned, that's about 20 to 30% that I have observed, not more than that. Response is comparatively poor, but definitely the patient feel that your medicine works well other than or comparatively better than any other medicine that is being prescribed. So if you are prescribing in lines with the Vata Vyadhi and the Balagraha.
okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I am Dr. Rahul Nair. I am from Yoganidhana Department, Ashtanga Ayurveda College. Sir, my question is regarding, sir, Dhadukshayajanya Pakshagatham and Avaranajanya Pakshagatham you have mentioned. Sir, can you give us some examples regarding this Dhadukshayajanya Pakshagatham? Many a time we feel that how to diagnose it is a cause of some doubt still remains. How to differentiate between that?
So there are some of the criteria that are being mentioned in the literature.
Yeah.
One is the initial comorbid that is present in the patient. That means if the patient has a dyslipidemia, that we call it as Shonika-Bishana, that is a prerequisite for the Margavarna. If it is present, then you may get diagnosis of Margavarna. Or if the patient has any such disease that is related to the Margavarna, it may be the ischemic limb disease or it may be the cardiac disease or the heart, the ischemic heart disease. If it is present, then you consider it's a comorbidity. The patient is likely to have the Margavarna Pakshagata. And if the patient has an arterial thickening, say for example, the radial artery is thickened, or if the carotid artery is thickened and palpable, then also you consider that it is related to that of the Margavarna Pakshagata. This is about the associated phenomena. More than that, sudden onset and the gradual onset is the phenomenon. And the Akasmat Pradarshana is considered to be a typical feature of Margavarna, and a gradual progression is a typical feature of the Dhatukshay. The patient was quite normal in the morning. If the afternoon, if the patient has developed the Pakshagata, and if there is no any apparent reason, if he has hit himself on the head, then there is a reason. If no such apparent reason is there, then spontaneous onset for no apparent reason is the characteristic feature of the Margavarna. And the reference for this is from the Ashtanga Hridaya Prameha Chikitsa, where he said that Margavarna presents spontaneously without any apparent reason. And gradual onset is the presentation of the Dhatu Kshayaja. Say for example, Dhatu here very specifically it refers to the Snayu, Kandra, Damani and Chira. Dhatu Kshaya in the sense Dhatu Kshaya of these. And a patient who is suffering from the motor neuron disease, initially he will have the weakness in one hand, which is called as Ekangavata. Then there will be involvement of both the hand and the leg of one side, then it is considered Pakshagata. And in another 1 year, it will involve all the 4 limbs and you call it as Sarvangavata. But whatever it may be here, progressive involvement and gradual onset and progressive involvement is typical feature of the Dhatu Kshaya, where the Dhatu refers to Snayu, Kandana, Damani and Chira. And so far as the Margavarana is concerned, which is considered to be the sudden, after the onset, after some time, there will be partial recovery. That is Lagutam Apayo. That's a characteristic feature of any of the Vata Vyadhi. This is typical. That means for the 3 to 4 days there is illness. 4th day onward there is recovery. And this particular phenomenon is typical of Margavarana. And that is not typical of Dhatu Kshaya. So based on that, based on the sudden onset, based on the partial recovery, and you may say that it is Margavaranaja or the Dhatu Kshaya. That is why how we differentiate clinically.
Sir, but when we referring to the literature regarding the Dhatu Avarna, for example, Rakta Dhatu Avartavadam, we will get the symptoms like Rakta Avarde Sadaharti Tonmam Sandaraja Vrasam, Avechiragi, Swayathu Jayade Mandalanicha. Such symptoms are not seen in Pakshagata patients, isn't it, sir? We will not.
Rakta Avartavada has nothing to do with the Pakshagata. Pakshagata is totally related to that of the Damani and Sira of the half of the body when it is affected. Alternative diagnosis is Marmabhigata, that is Shiro Marmabhigata, when this is present. And Raktavartavata will have the symptoms on the skin.
Yes,
that is redness and other features, they will be present. That will not be any Pakshagata at all.
So if we say Margavarna Janya Pakshagatam, with what factor that Avarna is causing, sir? It's a question.
In
what factor causes Avarna?
It's a
whether we will
Margavarna is a separate topic where we consider that Margavarna is said to be a manifestation of a Kapha dosha. And it is a Kapha and Medas, when they get accumulated, you may be knowing that Sushruta categorizes the Margavarna in the Rasa Pradoshaja Vikara. It is being categorized as Rasa Pradoshaja. And Margavarna, where the Damani Pratishtha is a word, and Damani Pratishtha and Margavarna, which is being taken as a Santarpanotta Vikara and caused by the excessive Sneha, and Kapha and Medas is the cause. Medas Upalepa is the phenomena, and finally presenting as a Margavarana. That means the Margavarana itself is a Kapaja Nanatmaja Vyadhi, and Margavarana Vata Vyadhi is a Vataja Nanatmaja Vyadhi. And therefore, Margavarana is a phenomena that is related to the Shonita Chandana and the Damani Upalepa and the Margavarana and the Sirajakra. So in that particular, it differentiates.
But also when we read the prognosis, they say Vivarjya Kshaya Hedugaha. The Kshaya Hedugam means whether the Pakshagata is caused due to Dhatu Kshaya or a patient who has
Pakshagata, which is Margavaranaja, has got a comparatively better prognosis than that of the Kshayaja. So lateral amyotrophic sclerosis, then degenerative disorders related to the nervous system, motor neuron disease, bulbar disease, all they belong to the category of Dhatu Kshayaja. For the simple reason that it is the gradual onset, it is progressive, matching with that of the Dhatu Kshayaja. And the thromboembolism and embolism and the hemorrhage, they all come under the sudden onset of the illness. They come under the category of the Margavaranaja. And this particular Margavaranaja has comparatively better prognosis related to that of the Dhatu Kshayaja, that is MND and the stroke, if I consider. And about 80% of the people who are suffering from the stroke, they will recover. About 5 to 10% of the people, they succumb to death. That's because of the major involvement of the marma. But about 70 to 80, they suffer. They recover. The people who recover from that particular illness, they will survive for years together, 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years if there is any recurrence. But so far as Dhatu Kshayaja is concerned, like that of the MND, it will progress, and about 5 to 6 years, the patient will die of the disease itself. That's how the prognosis of the Dhatu Kshayaja Vata Vyadhi, where the Dhatu refers to the Snayu Kandara and the Dhamani and Chira. And all these 4 structures refers to the nerve.
But when we speak about multiple sclerosis, motor neuron disease, etc., generally we say that they belong to the spectrum of Avarana. Kaphavrata Vyanan, Kaphavrata Udanan, etc. Is it true, sir? Or generally, have you seen in clinics the
Not
reverse?
the multiple sclerosis that is being said as Kaphavrata Vyana or Kaphavrata Udana. There should be a symptomatology suggestive of that.
Oh, yes.
Symptomatology suggestive of that. If the patient has retention of the urine, then you call it as Mutravarta Vata. If the patient has excessive tremors, then you consider it as Kaphavrata Vyana. In that particular way, the specific symptoms are present in that, they will determine that what type of Avarana is that. Otherwise, they come under the category of Ekangavata, Adharangavata, Ardhangavata, and the Sarvangavata and Pakshagata.
Okay. Say a new approach, sir. I am hearing. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So shall I say bye for now?
Sir, one minute, just 1 minute. It was so inspiring, and I remember the days of our PG days, and it was so inspiring, and hearing you again and again. It's always thought-provoking to us. Just as a formality, now I invite Dr. Deepti, the Secretary of PACTO, also the Associate Professor of from the Department of Swasthavrtam of Shantigiri Ayurveda Medical College, to say the word of thanks. Dr. Deepti, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, it's audible, na? Thank you, sir. Of course, it was such an enlightening session for all of us. As far as PACTO is concerned, besides the welfare of the faculty members, we always focus on delivering the best possible education to our students, and also to improve their clinical skills, so that they can expertise in future in their field. And your today's session has actually done maximum justice to both the ends. Like all the teachers could update our knowledge bank, also the clinical expertise that you have shared with us, exactly based on the theoretical principles laid down in the Shastras. It's really it was really such a great experience to listen to you, sir. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for sharing this evening with us. I would also like to thank Dr. Shibu Varghese, our senior faculty, who has felicitated the session today. And a lot of thanks to Dr. Narayana Nambi sir, as well as the team Ashtangam, who are working behind this Gurumukham lecture series for the benefit of the Ayurveda fraternity. Thank you everyone who has participated in the session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay sir, for accepting our invitation and spending a great time with all of us. Thank you once again, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So much.